continuing the video now.
Yeah. At that press conference, a journalist asked Donald Trump a question about Saudi Arabia and whether it was so interested in a Palestinian state. And he said, Donald Trump responded by saying, no, MBS and Mohammed bin Salman was not interested in, that didn't feature in the negotiations very prominently. But of course, Saudi Arabia was one of the first countries in the region to respond with a very strong denunciation of this plan to clean out, as Trump would put it, Gazans and establish a Riviera in the heart of the Middle East. So how faithful do you think Saudi Arabia really is to the plan of a Palestinian state?
Well, a few points here. It's funny you mentioned this. I was with somebody who is an insider. I'll just describe him as such because I don't want to expose this guy, just in respect for our, confidential conversation. So he was asked about whether this guy that he knew, Mohammed bin Salman, or still cares about the Palestinian issue, and he literally said he probably doesn't. And it's not just a guess from somebody who knew Mohammed bin Salman well, but also it's what Mohammed bin Salman said confidentially to some of the senior officials in the U.S. administration. This had been leaked in the past, but it probably didn't get the attention it deserved. The point I want to make here, number one, is that Mohammed bin Salman came with this, and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, with this hyper-nationalist agenda, hyper-nationalist discourse that does not care about what some of the people in the Muslim world call it strategic interest, and the deep strategy for Muslims, which is this relationship to the Muslim world, having the soft power with the Muslim world or the Arab world, having a relationship to Arab countries. He thinks that he can make Saudi Arabia great again, if we're going to use Trump's words. He thinks that Saudi Arabia is for the Saudis, and I'm not making this up. I swear to God, it's a slogan that is used by a lot of the Saudi bots on Twitter for so many years. There are actually devoted accounts on Twitter and elsewhere. It's a dedicated project and program within the Saudi government to cut all relationship between the Saudi people and other Arab people and Muslim people around the world, because they want the Saudi people to be isolated, easier to manipulate, easier to control, and also in case of incidents like the Arab Spring revolution or things like what happened in Syria right now, the Saudis will be isolated enough, will have their own issues, will have their own programs, will have their own, and that's, by the way, it comes to the question about liberalization and all in Saudi Arabia. So they have their own programs and agenda and ideas. So this is number one, is this hyper-nationalist agenda, Saudi first, Saudi Arabia is for the Saudis, and that's why also you see the mistreatment of workers, you see the mistreatment of expats, you see the immigrants even in Saudi Arabia being mistreated with, we have been documented, literally tens of thousands of people being tortured. Some, a lot of them were actually actually a lot of them died in the process of building, cities basically and projects. So that's number one about why this sense of carelessness about the Palestinian issue. So when you know this point, I want to tell you the second point, which is the fact that I just mentioned. Mohammed bin Salman himself told that a lot of people that he does not care about the Palestinian issue. All he cares about is what Palestinian issue can bring to the Saudi side. what the Palestinian issue
is. He's doing analysis simply like many Western analysts. I think maybe he believes that because the way he looks to the reality is not from an Islamic point of view, although he's supposed to be an Islamist, his father is Islamist at least. The problem with this point of view is that when they discuss, for example, if you follow Judge Napolitano, for example, Scott Ritter, Alistair Crook, all of these guys, they somehow more or less, although now some of them are waking up, they think these regimes like Saudi Arabia, they're similar to America. They may be more corrupt and so on, but it's similar. They somehow, they have a nationalistic agenda or some kind of a nationalistic feeling. But that's not true. What the Saudi regime is all about since Abdul Aziz and this guy, it did not develop yet. It is in historic level before the American Revolution, like Britain before American Revolution. For example, when the American Revolution succeeded and they kicked King George III, he lost his mind and there was a move, the madness for King George III. I think you have seen it. What was he saying in his state of shock? They took away my country. So the kings until that time or before, for them, the kingdom is like an own property. We know that even later, even the king of Belgium had the whole Congo as his own private property. And he annihilated 10 million of these hapless, what they call the pygmy or the short human beings, as they classified them as pygmy, huh? Classified them as non-human, and they, like animals, they exterminated 10 millions of them. But that was his private property. So he will fight, obviously, if you have an orchard, a big orchard, which brings you millions and billions, you will fight for it if you can. You will not give it up, no doubt about that. But you fight for it as your property. And the people there, as exactly like you fight for your cattle range, your cattle. They are your cattle. You own them. They are not your equal or under you. They are owned by you. So this mentality of ownership is that what Al Saud have. And in some statements, their slaves express that sometimes in certain way. I may mention, but remind me to mention, maybe I mentioned it quickly. One university professor was traveling with one dark one, obviously one of these called freed slave. That's before I left Saudi Arabia. There was nominally there were no slaves. They were all made freed by King Faisal. Nominally. But they remained really hanging from their lord. The only way they can live in there is his house. So they are factual slaves, even if they are nominally not. And they were discussing and so on, critical to certain administration, like administration of the municipality of Jeddah. There was a guy called Fassi. He did develop the municipality, did some artwork, nice development and so on. But he was known to be corrupt financially. And this guy, the black guy, next sitting to our friend, the professor in King Saud University, were criticizing that very badly. He steals from public treasury. And the professor told us, I think he told me directly or told the group, but they told me, I was surprised. This guy seems to be really having a modern mentality, understand what's going on in the world. So he discussed corruption of various things until he gets there, say, but we know now being exposed that Bandar bin Sultan, for example, or someone else took for the Gulf War or something about 1 billion. Yeah, that was after the Gulf War. And then it was leaked that he had 1 billion put in his pocket and so on. It's quite similar. You want to see what's happened. And there was I got the shock of my life. What did this guy, the ex-slave, who is still internally a slave, at the house nigger, what did he say? Say, no, that's different than fast. Why? Because this is theirs, their father's stuff. Haq abuhum, it's belong to their father. It's their property. So taking my treasury, that's his right. He's not stealing. That's his property. It's his treasury. So I tell you, this is an episode, obviously. You cannot, but if you analyze many people like that and the interaction, you smell that. They believe it's zero. So they were winning. So there's nothing called national. King Fahd is savvy and knows that in the modern time and world, it won't work this way. That worked maybe in Europe 3 centuries back. But even in Europe, it was gone. You have to appeal for something else. The time, for example, that his Catholic Majesty of Spain writes to Elizabeth I, I want to marry you. Why did he want to marry her? Is she beautiful? No, she's not very beautiful. I think the picture do not show such an attractive woman. And she never married. Maybe she's even sexually unable, cold. So what he wants, because if he marries her, Britain will be his. It's part of the dowry. And she refused, she sent the Armada. That time is gone. Already after George III, and say they took away my country, the one after him, his son, I think, the world has changed. So when Nelson was giving the final instruction to his troops in 1805 in the Battle of Trafalgar, the final message he sent to everyone, and they were sending, I think, by flashlights. So I don't know how they were doing the message, or by flags and so on. What was the final message? England expects every one of you to do his duty. He could not say the king. That's not fashionable at that time. We are now in the 18th something. We're in the 19th century, or not in the 17th or 16th, where the king expects you. But what he means there is king. What is England? Is it the mountains? The mountain do not know nothing. Or is it a simple farmer somewhere in a village? He doesn't even that there's a battle ongoing around Spain and around Napoleon. So who expects everyone to do his duty? The king, the owner. But the language has to change. People have progressed. Education has been, the printing press is working now for 3 centuries, educating the people and enlightening them. You cannot use this language. So they have developed the concept of patriotism, nationalism, and so on to substitute for being owned by the king. Now you are an independent human being endowed with rights and so on. The divine rights of king is just theory, is gone. Khalas. Maybe mentioned somewhere in some titles, like the title of the King of England, or the Defensor Fidei, the defender of belief, or it says Regina Gratia Deo, the queen by God's grace, not by any shot, by God's grace. But that's all what's remaining from the divine rights of king. This all has receded. So Fahad understood that. Fahad was a politician, and he was extremely pro-American in matter even American culture and civilization as well. And he was not a Muslim anyway. He did not believe that the Quran is a revelation. We said that in his private sector. So independent of that. So he started in the 70s also called national or patriotic education. He wanted to increase and develop something called Saudi Arabia as a nation, as a country. And he tried to progress that, but it still failed. But to develop something like that, you have to have a longer history. Secondly, there's a problem if the name contains the name of the family who believes that they own everything. If you tell me, for example, المملكة العربية الجزراوية, and your citizen will be Jazrawi, not Saudi, it may have worked. But if you say you must be devoted to your nation or your country, what's my country? Saudi Arabia. What's the Saudi? Where would it come? Saud is just recent, 300 years or 250 years. So what is this? It's not Hejaz, which is a name since thousands of years. It's not Najd, which is a name for thousands of years. It's not Iran, which is a name of thousands of years. What is it? So even the name is handicapping his attempt. And the people started avoiding the name. For example, in various communiques, which the father of Abdullah Alaoudh signed, and we have been writing together in the early 90s before I came here, we wanted to avoid Saudi Arabia. So what's the trick to do? We make a communique, for example, signed by scholars from the Arab Peninsula. And then we can do that only if we can persuade someone from Kuwait or elsewhere to sign. But when Salman bin Abdul Aziz, who was the ruler, governor of Riyadh, now the king, saw that, he was outraged and interrogated Salman Al Oudh, told him, what is this? Are you ashamed of the name of Saudi Arabia? Said, no, Your Royal Highness. No. It is because we have Kuwaiti here. They are not Saudi. We cannot put Arab Peninsula. And Salman is intelligent enough to know that it's the trick, but he couldn't say anything. So any communique who don't want to put the name scholars of Saudi Arabia, will get someone from Kuwait, some associate or someone from Qatar to be a co-signer. Then we can put it scholars from the Arab Peninsula. So it looks like a joke, but that is how things develop through history. And there's not enough historic time and not enough achievement in matter of national interest, if you call anything national interest, Saudi Arabia. It's only the royals' interest and their care for their own cattle range. And the people are their own cattle, yes. If you have a cattle range, you will groom the cattle naturally. You will immunize them against diseases naturally. Otherwise, you'll be stupid. You will lose your cattle, or you will lose your wealth. So you have to do that. But the same with Saudi Arabia. You have to do an infrastructure project, things like that, so that the people feel that you're caring for them. You have to get the people on board somehow. And with human beings, it's even more demanding than cattle. Cattle are sufficiently stupid to accept less. But actually, a cattle rancher treats his cattle better than the Saudi regime treating his own citizens. A cattle rancher will groom them, will wash them, will immunize them against every disease, care for them much better than the Saudi regime cares for his citizens. So, creating a national feeling in the nation or something like that is an attempt started by Fahd from the 70s. That's 50 years now. And until now, they could not succeed because the people recognize instinctively there's some problem. In that development, they stressed always, you are a Saudi, you have certain rights to appease the people. These workers we get from Egypt and from Pakistan, he's a Paki. He's an Egyptian. He's coming as a beggar. He is coming for the money. You are the master. He should be the slave. Which is simply not true because these people have built a country. And these people have educated you and your children. So they deserve better respect than that. But the Saudi regime is playing that role because the Saudi people, all the people of the Arab Peninsula, the Jazrawi, despite of all their negative, they still have Islamic feelings and Islamic commitment, and they regard the Pakistani as their brother, if he is a Muslim. This is dangerous. Things may develop in a direction which will not be beneficial for Al Saud, so they have to make a left. You have to subdue them. You are obliged to take their passport. You have the obligation to mistreat them, and so on. And especially if you are from a weak nation with the leadership who doesn't care about their people, like Pakistan or Bangladesh in time past, at least, and Indonesia and so on, you can take considerable liberty and mistreating the people. You can't take considerable liberty. They don't take this liberty in treating the British and the American. Actually, they took liberty treating the Paki who have British citizenship. And they complained here to the government at the time. Lord Nazir was in the government, I think, in the time past, in the time of Tony Blair after that. And Lord Nazir took a delegation from the parliament and went to say, listen, these are British citizens. You have to treat them like British citizens with respect. Otherwise, there will be diplomatic problems. And since then, they stopped asking for Islam. Samih Zubairi, our friend, when he was going in time past for Hajj and Umrah, they were asking him, from where are you? Yeah. See the passport, I'm from Britain. So, no, I mean originally. Say, I am originally, I'm born in Britain. Now they stopped that. So this is the usual way tyranny works. Dividing the people. Because they know the people in the peninsula are ultimately Muslims. Despite all tribalism and weaknesses and narrow-mindedness in many aspects, they are ultimately Muslims, and anyone coming from outside who has an Islamic commitment, even if they're restricted even to the madhab, if he's from Ahl Hadith or India, there are millions of them. Yeah, how you can treat this madhab? There's a funny story happened in the time of Abdul Aziz. One Yemeni, who was also Wahhabi essentially, was studying in Riyadh, and he talked something negative about King Abdul Aziz. He ordered him sent away. And then a scholar at the time, a scholar had clout and they have character. He went to Abdul Aziz and he was very well built, stronger than Abdul Aziz, very well built. This one, and if you embrace him in the book, say, why did you send our brothers and so on back to Yemen? So he talks about it, say, he is one of us, get him back. And then Abdul Aziz became angry, say, leave me alone, the son of Nuwayha. This is bin Nuh. And his mother is called Nuwayha. It's like a bad nickname. He said, listen, Nuwayha will be on the bridge, Yawm al-Qiyamah, taking from you good deeds because of the insult, but get them done. And I commented the story. Poor guy, he thinks Abdul will reach the bridge. Most likely he will never reach. He will go to the hellfire before he shall. And he'll take from the hasanat regarding him as a Muslim. And if you insult a Muslim in dunya, he will take from you good deeds in akhirah after crossing the hellfire. And then people will be clean and having some punishment. And they said, inshallah, God will not cross there. He will be gone before that. Anyway, back to the story. So you see, that scholar from Riyadh said, this is This is one of us. How can you expel him? Just because you talked about you? Bring him and rebuke him. Talk about him. What's your problem? So the seed of Islamic commitment and feeling for the Ummah is there. Whatever they do, it cannot go just in 1 or 2 generations. Things like that takes decades and centuries.
That's actually quite interesting, because he's going to, this is part of what he's trying to do. So you've obviously got Neon Project, you've got all the various concerts and everything to try and shift people's focus. And this is what Abdullah is going to be talking about as well.
So what MBS wants now is to ensure that he will become king. Internally, he followed the advice of his Western educated scholar that this feudal system is not good, it weakens the state, which is true in itself. But in the case of Saudi state, there's no deep state, no structure, well-established structure and parties and organization and House of Commons over centuries, which can stabilize the state and the society. It's not there. There's nothing there. So if you remove that, you will be the only one without really deep feet in the society and the state. But that's disregarding that. Internationally, he knows instinctively at least that he needs, because the regime has been always relying first on the approval and being established by the British, created by the British and approved by the British and removed from the list of protectoration by the British and continued. And then they switched to the Americans when it was clear that Britain is gone. Second World War is clear. Who is the new master in the world? It's America. And Abdul Aziz is having a good smell and nose for power, and he joined America right away and forsake Britain completely. And some faction of his family are pro-British and they're fighting with the pro-American wing, but this is internal politics. But they need, any one of them believes that I cannot establish myself without either Britain or America, especially America being now the new and dominant master. Until that's the case. So he has to have, so the deal with Trump is, I will be king, you support me. If someone in the family moves, you step in to eliminate them if necessary. And the deal was sanctioned, and Mohammed was able to take Mohammed bin Naif out, hang him for his feet, beat him up, treat him like a slave, and get away with that, because the master had made the decision for the vassals, and the vassals are offering enough good things for the master to accept that. And that's what's going on. Look at it that way. Look at it as if you're looking at the time of the Roman Empire. Don't look like modern states and national interest and a parliament and faction society and non-government organization discussing and think tanks. That all does not exist in Saudi Arabia.
They're too degenerate and idiotic. But it's interesting in terms of when he went into the issue of how they use...
These are vassal states, essentially.
It's interesting
even a nuclear country like Pakistan, you cannot get them out really of the description of being a vassal state. It's much better than Saudi Arabia. Definitely, they can accept more, but they have the vassal state mentality, the military. They cannot get out of the vassal state mentality.
Okay, I'll carry on playing. I want to get through pretty much all of it, because even though there's maybe some repetition, some stuff that you already covered, it's just good to go through it. It's interesting also when he started talking about bots and how they are using the same kind of tactics, it seems, as the Hasbro do, having actual bots and bot farms and people behind the scenes.
They use every technology. Bots, controlling the internet in time past. Obviously, why did they start controlling the internet and having the so-called King Abdul's City of Science and Technology? It's transformed into essentially an intelligence operation with huge computers on, in which they can watch all communications, and they claim they want to protect the people for pornography, mashallah. And the purpose is just to get these sites which have any political smell and ban them and then establish a center in which 300-400 people are working. And now, when bots have become more mature, like in the recent 10 years, they are employing bots. Yeah, that's true. But interestingly, all of that is having relatively little. It had effect, no doubt, but for example, we ourselves, without bots and without anything like that, I think we have more influence in Saudi Arabia than all of their bots. Ultimately, it is the content of the message. At the beginning, it may be grudging or slow, but ultimately, only the good message, the well-established message, the verifiable message will go through.
A
Ultimately,
message with deep roots based on Islam, uncompromising.
especially
That's the issue. Rather
Yeah.
than kowtowing to people, rather than being complacent, rather than being cowardly, having a strong, unequivocal message, not hiding, not censoring evidences. Thank you, Muslim. Think about this. Okay.
Absolutely.
You can offer to make Saudi Arabia more powerful, richer, and that's when the discourse with the statement that was just put out can serve. So the third point I want to make is Mohammed bin Salman used the feeling, the sense, the absolute sense among the vast majority of the Saudi people and like vast majority of the Muslim people, of the Arab people toward Palestine, defending the land against occupation, against apartheid. He used that not to embark on a project to serve the Palestinian cause, but rather to use it for more gains for the Saudi government. And I'm going to explain how in three quick points here. So point number one is that Mohammed bin Salman, when he talked to the West generally in English, he told them many times, and he tells it still to a lot of officials, that it's not that he's not going to normalize, he's not going to basically sell out, but rather he's going to have a price. And if you ask why the price, he says, that's number two, that Sadat was assassinated when he normalized, and Saudi Arabia right now is more important than Egypt. The Saudi situation and being the stronghold of Muslims and being the land of the two holy mosques, and how that relates to the third holy mosque is a really essential and symbolic, hugely symbolic relationship. But therefore, he's not going to give it up for a smaller price. And so he used that. He talked about assassination, and he literally told one senator that he fears assassination if this happens, if he normalizes without a price. And for an assassination to be basically prevented, he has to be protected. So we come to the third point, which is the thing that he made about the three requirements or requests that he made to the U.S. administration. And by the way, not to the Israelis. He's not negotiating with the Israelis, which is funny. He's negotiating with the U.S. on the conditions of how he's going to normalize with Israel. And the three conditions, basically, he said, one is to develop a nuclear, peaceful nuclear program. Two is to have a NATO-like agreement with the U.S. security agreement. The three is a huge transaction of arms sales, including F-35. Now, if you look at the conditions, and by the way, they are like public. They have been made public by everyone, by a lot of people now. It's not secret. None of these things is related to Palestine, to Gaza, West Bank, Muslims around the world, to the Palestinian cause, Palestinian issue. It just goes to the first point I made, which is this hyper-nationalist agenda. It has nothing to do with the Arab world, has nothing to do with the Palestinian. Now, I want to end with this point. I don't want to take a lot of time at this question, but I want to end with this point. So now, if you wonder why the strong rhetoric and statement coming out from Saudi Arabia right now, with all the pressure for normalization, well, again, he wants a price. I mean, he wants to show that, the Saudi people is not going to tolerate me for doing this without a price, and for me to be protected from my own people, from the Arab world, from the Muslim world, from my own even, forces. I have to be given this absolute protection mechanisms, including this security agreement. By the way, it has to be approved by the Senate for this, because he did not want, he doesn't want an agreement that going to be torn apart with the next admin, with the next president or somebody in the future. He wants something NATO-like. And just to explain to the viewers what a NATO-like again.
Yeah, sorry, you said something, Sheikh?
Yeah. You said something. It's clear, but it's not for the country. Still, he is making the same mistake. It's for him and his kingdom. That's it. You have to distinguish that, because it makes the agenda a little bit different. If it's for the country, under even it's an amorphous point of view about nation or country or nationality or philosophy or something, it will make the politics different, and it will show that, for example, some of Saud, even the son of King Salman, Abdul Aziz bin Salman, who was the deputy minister for I think since the time of Yemeni, or after that, the Ministry of oil and petroleum, and then now he's, I think, the Minister of Oil and Minerals and things like that himself. Very nice person as a person, definitely nice and very polished and very well educated, very humble. He made a tweet a couple of years ago. I was still having good eyesight, so I answered to it. He says, but there was some kind of announcement from India and China, or announced from some international organization that they are now the second and the third economic power in the world, and well industrialized, and have really basic industry developed and things like that. He said, we missed 40 years. We could have developed industry and so on, to be as good or even better than China and India. So I answered to him, a bit nasty, the answer, but I felt it must be said. I said, right, that would have been a great idea, but that must have been impossible, because your uncles, he's the son of Salman, your father and your uncle, they are interested only on cohabiting with prostitutes and sex with young boys. That's what they're interested in. That's it. If that's your interest, you'll never become an industrial power. You'll never develop. But if you have some kind of amorphous nationalism or amorphous patriotism, say, oh, I want the country to become strong. I need basic industry. And the country has considerable superfluous in oil. So I can do industrialization even on top of everyone. I will not start with these fuming, old-fashioned factories which will poison the atmosphere and so on, because I am poor like China and India. No. I start with the most advanced technology because I have the money for that. Similar to Korea, and even better than Korea, because I have more money. But there was no intention. And I'm not self-experienced that. I was one day called by Rashid Mubarak, may Allah have mercy on his soul, and he said, I want to talk to you about something sensitive. Come to the main hall of King Saud University in the new building. It's a very long hall. I had a problem in the education office in America, so I thought he has some information about that. And so I have a confrontation with Bandar bin Sultan in the embassy and so on. So I thought maybe something like that is that. So I went there, quite worried what could be happening, because they were filing a case and things like that, but all behind closed doors. When I met him, I was surprised. He said, King Fahd received a letter from a man they value as a good analyst in London, an Arab nationalist, warning him that Iran is having a nuclear program. That's in 87 or 88. One of these 2 years. Definitely 87 or 88, not 89. After coming from America, I came late 86, so it cannot be late 86. It will be 87, like in 87. And he referred that to Sultan. The man said Iran is having a program which is very maturing, and it is mandatory for you, Saudi Arabia, to have a nuclear program as a balance. Otherwise, Iran will be dominant. And you remember that time already the Iran-Iraq war ended with essentially the defeat and the failure of Saddam to unseat the revolutionary government in Iran, and all these repercussions. And obviously they know that Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries financed Saddam with tens of billions. So they will have revenge feeling, and they have the right to have revenge feeling. So Fahad referred that to Sultan. And Sultan thought about that and contacted Rashid Mubarak. Rashid Mubarak himself is in the chemistry department in nuclear chemistry. chemistry of nuclear materials, uranium, etc., etc. And Rashid is high-ranking because al-Mubarak is having a special relation with Al-Saud, although they are not from Najd, they are from the eastern region, from Hufuf and Hassa. And the reason Al-Saud have to give them special standing is that when Abdul Aziz was almost killed in the Battle of Kanzan, his belly was slit and his intestine gushed out. One of Al-Mubarak, unfortunately, fixed him, got the guy, and they stitched him with hair. You will not believe the story, but that's what happened. And he recovered in the house of Al-Mubarak. So he must be appreciated for that. They cannot ignore Al-Mubarak. Without them, they would have been extinct, and they would not know Saudi or Aziz state. So he's high ranking, and he's on all these supreme councils as an advisor. So he was the right target for this. And we made a committee. I was representing the physics side. We have one who is a geologist who can scan all Saudi Arabia for deposits of uranium and other materials, etc., and a few others. And one engineer, nuclear engineer, for nuclear reactor, I think that. And I think one or two more people. And we started working. Then it was clear that the people are not serious, or they received some kind of pressure. And then Sultan anointing, so okay, we will make a military committee controlling that and so on, like all nations and so on. And the Rashid was outraged. I told him, have patience. This is a project of importance for the country and for the Muslim world. We should persist. But ultimately, it turns out they are not serious. But the only mistake I'm wondering until now, what happened to King Fahd, who is politically savvy and knows his limitation, to send to refer that letter to Sultan. My best analysis is that at that moment he must have been high on cocaine or drugs. Otherwise, if he was awake, he would never have referred that, because he must know immediately this will not work. Neither the American nor the British will allow him to do that. It's out of question. And later on, obviously, there was pressure on him and so on. That leaked to the masters, and they said, no, that's a billion, forget it. And since then, no nuclear things were done. They claimed that they would adjoin that to the Saudi, to the King Abdul Aziz City of Science and Technology. Yeah, they adjoined it formally. And recently, a couple of years ago, they were discussing having a research reactor, buying a research reactor from China. Meaning after 30 years, they didn't have even a research reactor. So what kind of serious is that? So these people are not serious. They are not serious. They won't do anything in that direction. Just to affirm the issue that they are looking at that as a cattle range. Yes, they will spend, they will improve, they will for this purpose, with this mentality. Things like that, with absolute protection, health, and so on, the Americans will not give. And even if you give, say, you have already all the protection. You were given the protection by Roosevelt at that time. And then when that expired, essentially, because that was in 1945, 55, 65, 75. So after 25, 30 years, Nixon told him, we cannot continue with that unless you cooperate in the matter of the dollar. And the cooperation required, telling Saud, or said Mohammed Salman was not even born at that time. And the only what we need you to do is that you do not allow selling oil, because they were a major producer who can control prices and bring prices and amounts up and down. Anyone who dares selling oil in any currency except the dollar, because you remember Nixon separated dollar from gold, and some people were pondering to use British pound, to use this, to use that, and so on. Said, you use only the dollar, and make sure that nobody from OPEC and OPEC use anything except the dollar, because the most important, most voluminous trade in the world is the oil. If everyone is forced to use the dollar, then the dollar will keep. Otherwise, it will collapse and go after being disconnected from gold. In return for that, you have protection for the throne for the next 50 years or something like that. That's all what you need. You don't need about that. The other things is automatic. There are enough bases in Bahrain and in Kuwait and so on. At the time, there was nothing in Kuwait, but it was in Bahrain and even in Saudi Arabia to protect you. Don't worry about that. But that's the condition. Now that's expired. Now America is now self-sufficient. America does not care about it. It may put pressure on Saudi Arabia to decrease the prices and so on. But Saudi Arabia cannot afford that because they are already now not balancing the budget and so on. So Hans Finance tried to get maybe something for a nuclear deal, but who is offering for that? Recognition of Israel. Trump will tell him, you have to recognize it willing or unwilling. So don't play games. That's what will happen. So I think the analysis is faulty because the premises they start with Abdullah Al Oudh is simple-minded, Western-style shallow premises, even made more shallower, being by Islamists from Saudi Arabia who does not know what's going on in the world. At least the American analysts like Scott Ritter, like Alistair Crook, like McGregor and so on, they know a little bit what's going on in the world and they know the power relation. This guy does not know.
Yeah.
Although he has given up to be believing himself to be the Alexander the Macedonian, but still he is living in another world.
I'll carry on. This bit on Palestine, this condition.
Yeah.
There's quite some good things to comment on.
By the way, all the leaks recently and after September, October 7, for the first few months, were clear that everyone who met with the Saudis and the Egyptians and so on, they has been told, finish Hamas, annihilate them. Then we are in business. Just get rid of them, annihilate them completely. That's it. Now they're trying to bail out of that because they thought, now we are on top of the world. Just a few months I have. Hamas is gone. And the Palestinian killed or not killed, who cares? Actually, some of them will advocate for that even. Some of them will say, don't care. I don't care about the Palestinians. I have nothing to do with them. I don't care. But Hamas, I must annihilate them. Otherwise, they will shake my throne. There's an ideological and personal hostility with the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. A sincere and deep hostility. So now they have to edge because that has been leaked enough, and all the Israeli politicians have said that what the Arabs saying is just for the public consumption. But between us and them, say just finish Hamas, do it quickly, do it quickly. You are too slow. What are we doing? Make it, but they could not do it. That's it. Allah made all their plans fail by divine intervention, if you wish to say, against these guys. And it's the first step for the unseating, inshallah. Carry on.
Creating a large army online to give you false impression, to give me false impression about what the Saudi people look like, how the Saudi people feel. You will see thousands and thousands of people pouring into your own account once you mention Saudi Arabia about anything, or the Crown Prince, or one program, or whatever they do. But they have a similar thing. It's easier to detect. They always have Mohammed bin Salman on their profile. They have one of the program. They put either 2030 or some of the other, telling, I guess, tales about what these accounts are. We used to call them bots, but I think now it's larger. They're like real people behind, like getting paid, like behind laptops and desktops, basically.
They have a center for dedicated center.
You mentioned earlier.
About Saudi Arabia all the time, getting paid full time, thousands and thousands of them. And why is that? Because they want to give you the impression about Saudi Arabia. And they want to tell you whatever the Crown Prince says, it's the general feeling of the public. That's what the public in Saudi Arabia feels like. But sometimes, from time to time, they slip in something that comes kind of out of control, tells about what the public looks like or feels like. When one time the Saudi government was pressed about why they don't go quickly for normalization, they suddenly, finally, gave an accurate assessment and polls about the vast majority, and they said 98% of the Saudi people, not talking about the Arab people, Saudi people have been manipulated for a decade now. They have been controlled, tortured with this narrative, with this rhetoric, like dedication of thousands of accounts of programs and everything about Palestine, trying to distort the idea that Palestine has an issue, that Palestinians are people with a right, that, about the occupation, the apartheid, talking about Israelis as being friendly and talking friendly about the idea of Israel and being part of the region. Despite all of that, 98% of people absolutely supports the Palestinian cause. and then 90-something% is completely against normalization. And by the way, they only had to publish this once to prove to the West that it is harder for them to normalize without a real price.
Just one
You know,
remark. I think these numbers also, maybe even if published by the Saudi regime, is exaggerated. There's no way there would be a 98 or something like support Palestine. There will be a good fraction, maybe 20% and so on. They don't care about Palestine. They care about hishik, bishik, and dancing and so on, and filling their belly and satisfying their
No,
gym.
this is not the people. This is not the regime. The people.
Yeah, I know. But that poll is presented by the regime to the West that we are in a calamity. Don't force us. That's it. So they may have played with the numbers. Let's be rational. There's no way. The moment you see 90%, something like that, 85%, you will think it is some kind of it's rigged somehow.
I mean, why wouldn't it though? Because of Muslims being there, because of.
For example, there was a poll made by I think Washington Post in the mid previous decade, like 2015 and something like that, claiming that 10% of the Saudi population, higher percentage than even in Belgium, are essentially atheists or agnostics. So it was at least from the people polled, the educated class who can answer a poll and so on. So I said in one of our broadcasts in the old, not old, not very old, but a medium old broadcast, which was satellite broadcast still at that time, I said, I don't believe these numbers. Even in the educated class, I think it's exaggerated. I cannot conceive that we are ahead in atheism and Gaza than Belgium. That does not smack good, reasonable. And then a few months later, or a few weeks later, someone called you from the University of Petroleum and Mineral, King Fahd University, which used to be called the Faculty of Petroleum and Mineral in the Eastern region, and said, I made a rough poll between our teachers and students in our university to see if your objection to the statistics of the Washington Post is warranted. Say, sorry, tell you, Sheikh, I found 20% are atheist or agnostic, not 10, even worse. These will not care about Palestine. Trust me on that. They will not care about Palestine. The only reason for anyone there or any in the Muslim world to care about Palestine, the essential reason is Islam. The moment that's gone, there's no other reason to care. Some may have some moral values or something, but it's unlikely someone who converted from Islam into agnosticism and atheism would be caring about these values. But maybe in America, where they have some values in ancient time, as now we reactivated the younger generation, that's another historical, but not that. So these numbers may be inflated. So we don't fool ourselves. They may be until we have really solid, respectable, reliable polls. We don't have.
Okay. So I mean, so it's been inflated to kind of increase their hand, and it's another discussion as to why
everyone except 2% are pro-Palestine. Against that, if we do, we will be killed. Just to give them some negotiating, but even that will not help. This shows that they are stupid. They think the Americans and the CIA do not have their own polls. They have their own ways of polling, telephone polls and so on, interacting with the people. They have. Even in oppressive society, they can give you some statistics if they want. Sometimes they give wrong statistics also to fool their people, like the statistic they give to the American leadership concerning Ukraine. Most of it is fabricated, it's played with, fixed with the Ukrainian government to get more money and so on. Some of it go in their pockets also. There's also corruption like that. Less than Arab countries and Muslim countries, but there's corruption also in America and so on.
There's another discussion as to why the number of atheists is so high, and that's probably something that's going to be covered in some respects later in terms of some kind of an analysis on the impact of Wahhabism and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's coming later.
That's a reaction to the Wahhabism, no doubt about that.
The lack of scientific understanding within the creed.
Yeah,
the subverted creed, shall I say? Okay, at this point he's going to start discussing normalization, the conditions that have been put. Bit on hyper-nationalism. So we can start. A bit of a synopsis, bit on the strategy. I can skip through some of this.
Yeah, Israel, and these are negotiations, as you said, with the United States. the NATO-style defense agreement, the transfer of nuclear know-how, how close do you feel that America is ready to engage on that level? I mean, before Trump's statement this last week, there was a lot of speculation in the press that normalization was coming very, very soon. Does that indicate that the Americans are very much ready to sign a NATO-style agreement with Saudi?
I think it's very unlikely at the moment. So not sure if Trump is going to do this, and not because Trump couldn't or doesn't want to. I think he wants to, and he has no problem doing that. It's just like it will need a Senate approval. For the Senate approval, it is very, very hard to get the Democrats on board with such a pure Republican project, basically, of protecting Mohammed bin Salman. And for the new civic nuke program, Lindsey Graham basically said it once that he thinks a help of sort. It will probably be a humble kind of project. It's not what a lot of people. It's not what it sounds like. But they will make sure that it's something that satisfies the minimum of what the Saudi wants, and at the same time doesn't do anything really, and also make it easier for the Saudis to normalize. So for the security agreement, that's one. For the nuclear program, that's two. As to the transactions, of course, it's going like expected before. As you may saw in the news, like $6 billion, even more than what Trump asked for, have been offered by the Crown Prince to Trump. And this is probably not because, investment or economic reasons. Otherwise, they would have done it a long time ago. It's for pure political reasons, for the protection of Mohammed bin Salman, his own throne, and his own way to power.
Abdullah, how do you assess the political abilities of Mohammed bin Salman? I mean, is there a method behind what seems sometimes...
The issue of NATO loyalty, I mean, that's rather unconceivable for following reasons. For that, to give it to Saudi Arabia with a treaty which is approved by the parliament or something, addressed publicly or something like that, I mean, with the Senate, is that it must entail in that case to persuade the Congress to accept that, is that Saudi Arabia will admit a big base for the Americans and approve an open door policy for American forces, so that America can get 100, 200,000 to wage war against them, and to justify it through the Saudi because of the danger of the Houthi, for example, of Yemen. But the problem with that is that, first of all, Trump does not want to have forces outside America unless absolutely necessary. That's number one. Actually, he has ordered the Ministry of Defense, or the DOD, the Department of Defense, to study the withdrawal from Syria, study the possibility of doing it in 30 days or 60 or maximum 90. 3 proposals, so he can analyze which one is more convenient. So clearly he wants to bear out. He doesn't want. And I think he has the correct sense that this is dangerous and it will lead nowhere. They did that in Afghanistan, and the result, they got kicked in the butt. Well, let's face it. Even if Scott Ritter say nobody can kick America in the butt, that's because he's an American nationalist and he thinks it's a matter of power and so on. It's not matter that you can bomb Afghanistan in oblivion. The matter the political will. Can you do that? The Afghani can do that, and they did it to you, and you're out. That's it. That's kicking in the butt. It's not matter you can win the battlefield on the battlefield. It matter, can you win the war? Can you win the strategy? Can you go in the doctrinal confrontation? But independent of that. So he has to offer, I will do that, and I will fight against Yemen. But even having in the discussion the issue of Yemen and invading Yemen, comparing that to invading Iraq succeeded at that time and ended in the disaster also. Succeeded with 150, 200,000 soldiers were needed. Yemen will need much more, and most likely it will not succeed because they are already They're already in fight for 9 years, and they are hardcore, and they battle hard in it. Iraq was under siege for 10 years, and Saddam Hussein and the cohort around him did not do the correct policy from the beginning. From the day they invaded Kuwait, they committed policy blunder after policy blunder. So it's not the same situation. Besides this, the case of Iraq almost annihilated America. Luckily, the Saudis took to their side and diverted the jihadi movements toward running behind magicians and destroying graves instead of killing Americans. That's what they made them lucky. That's it. And the Iranians chickened out and supported the government there under American control. They're saying we have to keep the peace, we have to benefit the people of Iraq. This is all fake arguments. And the result we see now. Until now, even this Sudan is an American agent. And is an obstacle for Iran and for the Islamic movements and for everyone else. But nobody can do anything for him. Everyone is afraid of America. That's it. So to get something like that, you need some agenda. Will be discussed publicly. That's to confront Yemen. That's to invade Iran. If it is so, one of these, then Iran will feel the knife at their neck. They may have chickened out in Palestine and failed historic catastrophe for them. But if the knife comes to the neck, they'll have to defend themselves. And they attack the American forces in the Gulf and the bases. And the whole area will be inflamed just for self-defense because they see the knife at their neck. And the same with Yemen. I don't think they will allow that Yemen will be stormed by 200,000, 300,000 Americans. It's just inconceivable. It doesn't make any sense. So that will not happen. Someone could say, Alhamdulillah, actually, despite all his stupidity, he recognized that this condition will not be accepted by the Americans, so he can bail out. I cannot do this except with this. You do this, I do that. So he can bail out of that. He doesn't want to have the embarrassment of. Now he sees clearly. In time past, claiming I must be nuclear if Iran gets nuclear. Now it's everyone is foregone conclusion that's over. The nuclear issue is over. So he has to get some kind of a treaty. And the only thing is that I think the Saudi regime, like the Egyptian leadership, they are in complete disarray. Maybe part of the action of Trump recently, they said I will force them to accept, especially Egypt and Jordan, is like what Sheikh Bassam Jarrah said, is garbage recycling, because these rulers have become garbage. Everyone see them on the garbage heap of history, and now he wants to recycle them and give them a polish. So he say, I will put it. They say, no, they saw declaration. No, I'll put, no. Okay, I will cut the head. No, back and forth. So they get some standing that they are really resistance and they have certain agenda. In reality, they have no agenda. The same, the king of Jordan, his agenda is to keeping the cattle range called Jordan under his control. The same with in Egypt. In Egypt, it's a military feudal system. Not one feudal lord, not one king, but quite a number of feudal lords who are living on the blood of the Egyptian people. And they want to keep it that way. That's the Egyptian army. I'm not talking about the common soldiers. Common soldiers can't make any decision. It's the leadership. The common soldier might be courageous, might be willing to sacrifice, but the leadership is in another page. You will never get anywhere this way. So I think this is all mostly propagandistic, back and forth, an attempt to get a little bit more gain, to get a little bit more standing, trying desperately to accelerate the clock where you have missed to do it in the right time, in time past. They may be biting their nail now, not knowing what to do. How come that Yemen, which was, when I left Saudi Arabia, passed through Yemen, there's no comparison between Saudi Arabia and the infrastructure and so on with Yemen. The only thing which Yemen was progressive, dictated by this difficult geography, is that they recognize that a mobile phone will be a solution for the phone system. So their phone system is not a landline system, completely mobile instead. But it's dictated by necessity. But it seems to be since then, since ancient time, the Yemenis ancient time are people of industry, of manufacturing, handymen, and so on. They developed industry. They're making, for example, hypersonics locally. Saudi Arabia is not capable to do anything like that. Not by 1,000 miles. They could have if they started earlier, like Abdul Aziz bin Salman said. But it's not possible to start with this kind of leadership. That's not their agenda. That's not their worldview. That's not how they spend their nights and days thinking about. No, that's not. Absolutely not.
they've tried to buy the people, and then when the money runs out, that's when you start to get discontentment. In fact, going on to the next point where he's going to start talking about liberalization, that's another. It's kind of like he's kicking the can down the road. I'll carry on playing this. There's a bit about his hyper-nationalism, soft power point of view. Then he's going to talk about liberalism. Then he's going to talk about Abdul Wahab, Saudi history. So there's some good stuff to go through, inshallah.
Seems like a lack of strategy.
Well, look, there is sometimes a method of analyzing such behavior from such dictators, which is to throw in there the irrational factor. You know, like seeing sometimes how decisions were made in the past, and you'll be, you know, laughing of how analysts from the West or elsewhere kind of overthink a lot of stuff and how they were made. Of course, yeah, there are like major decisions that like are contemplated enough, went through consultation and, you know, experts like, but there are decisions that was just like made because they want to prove a point, or they want to, you know, have a posture of sort to one region or another, or to one people or another. And so, just to the question of the rationality, like if you look at the war in Yemen, for example, it was made overnight. Even the crown prince at the time didn't know, was not completely on board, and this is not a secret. The king, of course, has nothing to do with anything. He has no idea, you know, about what's going on. And part of what he did it is like he said he wants to kick out Houthi from, you know, Sana'a. Houthi now has a stronger you know, position in Sana'a and elsewhere. Houthi are much stronger than when the war started. None of the, you know, goals were achieved. When Mohammed bin Salman blockaded Qatar, he said he's going to make Qatar less impactful and weaker. Qatar is stronger after years and years of blockade. And when he put the Prime Minister of Lebanon under house arrest, Hariri, and slapped him in the face, so Al-Hahtani did, they thought they're going to basically restructure the Lebanese political dynamics and make it, you know, better for Saudi Arabia and its interest. Never had, like, none of this achieved anything at all. They cut relationship with Canada over a tweet because they tweeted about Sam al-Badawi. And what did this lead to? Anything fruitful at all? Nothing. It's just like they came back to like diplomatic relationship with Canada, and it just sent nothing. It just showed that there is an irrational actor. Of course, now the foreign policy is starting to get a bit less, I would say, masculine, a bit less aggressive, more steady, you know, at least pattern than the past. But still, the irrational actor is there. The general, I think, theme for many other what would have been rational decisions is basically going to be this agenda of a hyper nationalist driving force of trying to restructure relationship between Saudi Arabia and neighboring countries and Muslim countries and Arab countries, and basically kind of revisit the idea that Saudi Arabia is going to subsidize a lot of stuff to other countries. That's what Mohammed bin Salman has in mind, is that Saudi Arabia is doing a lot of great things and donating to other countries, and this should stop. It's like the same mentality that Trump comes, you know, to the admin with, that, you know, Trump is doing a lot of, like, that the US is doing a lot of, you know, stuff for a lot of people without anything concrete in return. Mohammed bin Salman came with that, like, similar idea that Saudi Arabia is donating a lot of stuff, giving a lot of money, giving a lot of, you know, subsidies to neighboring countries, to Muslim countries, even to thinkers, to think tanks, to institutions. And this has to be completely revisited. Anybody that's going to have a relationship to Saudi Arabia is going to do for one of two reasons. One, because they fear Saudi Arabia, fear the wrath. They're not going to do with the carrot, but rather with the stick. The wrath of Saudi Arabia, its influence, its soft power, its you know, its TVs, its, you know, all of that, or is going to do for Saudi Arabia something that is worth for Saudi Arabia giving you something back.
On that note, I mean, Saudi Arabia.
So, what's your thoughts on that so far, then, in terms of the kind of incentivization that Saudi's going to have, and it's similar Trump-esque type of way of doing things, coercion. Is there any merit to that? Do you think it's just desperation?
The premises are false. Saudi federalist nationalism, ultranationalism. I said, with these premises, you'll never analyze the politics properly. That's it. It's only these yes, they have to, in Arab countries like in Lebanon, they have to give their stooges, there's something, and their stooges contain and they're very well cooperating with the Christian there, because they regard Hezbollah and Iran as a danger, not because of the madhab and so on as they claim, and defending the Sahaba. No, because it will shake their throne. Before that, in the time of the Shah, they were very close friends with the Shah. Excellent friendship. There was no issue with sectarianism and religion or anything like that, no. But when the Iran came on the field, that was shocking. Now we have a republic led by people who are religious people, and even outrageous things like ministers being detained and accounted for, and things like that. This is the model which radiates, it will unseat them. You have to find some solution. And then they played the Islamic card this time than in sectarian form with Iran, and in general Islamic form with supporting the American purpose in Afghanistan, benefiting from Muslim simple-mindedness and gullibility and so on. And that's how things developed. And they recognize, that's the way to go. Exactly like Faisal did. When Saudi Arabia was a real danger because of the confrontation with Abdul Nasser, Faisal benefited from the grand mistake of Abdul Nasser and his cohort, that they cracked down on the Muslim Brotherhood. With this way, they cut their own legs. With the result, the Muslim Brotherhood scattered all over the world. They went to Saudi Arabia, got some support. Even Faisal say, Said Qutb is Shaheed. Condemning Abdul Nasser is dead. He never believed that he's Shaheed or anything like that. He is a first-class actor, although he has never worked even as a secondary actor in Hollywood. By the way, King Abdullah has have some secondary positions in some Hollywood movies. Anyway, so he used that Islamic card very efficiently and defeated Abdul Nasser, finished Arabic nationalism and socialism by this card. This card is very effective. At that time, Muslim Brotherhood was deeply integrated. They partly because they really believe this is, many of them are simple-minded and think this is somehow Islamic regime. Yeah, some people are corrupt, that's a human weakness and so on, but they never understood the depth of the regime of this nature. That's a problem. That's a problem with Islamists. They are completely shallow in this thing, although they have been warned. For example, I'm aware Hizb ut-Tahrir sent a delegation after the coup d'etat in Egypt in 52, I think 53 or something, and met with the leadership of Muslim Brotherhood, telling them, listen, we disagree with you on many issues, but we are Muslim brothers like you. We are with you. And these coup d'etat people, these generals, and these, at the time, the highest was the rank, there was General Najib, was a general, yes, was Major General. These guys are American agent. Next day, they would eliminate you. What was the response of the guys there, except Sayyid Qutb? When it comes to Sayyid Qutb, they told him, you are the American agent. We don't want to talk to you. They don't. These people living in another world, they don't want to accept their brother's advice. This another party, they're out. The same disease had infested Hizb ut-Tahrir now. So they went to Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb received them very nice and said, these guys there in Maktab al-Irshad are living in another world. We have to have patience. I know that these so-called free officers are not free and so on, but we have to find a way to work through this calamity. And they are the one who diffused the popular movement against the coup d'etat, because there was a massive demonstration in Cairo. The people in Egypt were really politically savvy. They were up to the level of the world in matter of political activity, and they were like a storm. They're coming to the Republic Palace or the Palace, government palace, and saying, "Military back to the barracks." And Abdul Qadir Rahmatullah came out saying, "You are absolutely right. Military have to go back to the barracks, but we have to give them 1 year to sort matter out." And they will go. And we guarantee they will go. And that diffused the people. Few months later, Abdul Qadir was hung up by the coup d'etat. That's what we have. That's the situation of the Ummah. And Abdullah Aoudh and co, they come from that. Because his father is Sururi, and the Sururi are essentially Ikhwani Salafi. Instead of combining the best, they combined the organization style of the Ikhwan and which is a good aspect. But in the political analysis, they took their morphism and shallow-mindedness. And the matter of aqidah, they became Wahhabi, which is a catastrophe. Wahhabi of Madkhali type, worse. So they will not get the Ummah out of mess. No, not even the people of Riyadh, let alone the whole Ummah, let alone the people of Najd. There's no way. That's what they have. Does not fit in the 21st century. Can't do anything. Trust me on that. They will never be ineffective. So Muslim was hijacked by Abdul Faisal. He played the games very well. And also later on, Abdullah pretended to be an Arabist and anti-imperialist and so on. And there is a rumor which is still persisting until now. Nobody is confirming or denying that they give him bay'ah. In the case he becomes king, he will declare khilafah or something like that. And the system will become fully Islamic and for Islamic causes. But later on, when Saud established himself and they got out of the crisis of the revolution in Iran and the crisis of Afghanistan with flying colors, and they escaped the catastrophe of Saddam invading Kuwait and so on, and they started asserting themselves, they looked at the field and they saw that the Madkhali and Jami al-Wahhabi are the right horse they can ride on, and they adopted those and started kicking them with other. Initially getting them out of positions one by one, person by person, and then later on declared them to be terrorists and prosecuting them until now. They declared to be a terrorist organization. Yeah, that's how it works with these regimes. So